Thank you for joining us today for our program, Cajun Document, Not the Last Word. My name is Amanda McFillin. I'm the programming manager here at the Historic New Orleans Collection, and we're so delighted to have all of y'all joining us from all over the country. This is fantastic. As many of you may know, that this program today is based on our current exhibition, Cajun Document, Acadiana, 1973 to 74. And we're delighted to be joined today by the two photographers of the photographs featured in the exhibition and the curator, John Lawrence. So I'll be introducing them in just a second. You can see their bios are here on screen. But just a couple of housekeeping tips. Everybody is popping into the chat to say hello. That's fantastic. Please say hi, talk amongst yourself, share your own memories. As you see the photographs come up on the screen, we want to hear from you. If you have questions for Charles and Doug and John, there is also a Q&A button down at the bottom of your screen. That is where you post your questions that you want us to answer later in the program. That's where I'm going to be looking when I go to answer questions. So put them in the Q&A. And if you're on Facebook Live, we're going to try to make sure we see your questions as well. So just feel free on Facebook Live to post them in the comments. Before we get started, we just want to say thank you to everyone in our HNOC community. Y'all have been so supportive. We've been doing so much virtual programming over the last year, and we have just loved having everyone participate. And a special thanks to all of our members. Your membership and your contributions make it possible for us to do really great programming like this. And especially when we've been virtual, we have been working hard behind the scenes to continue our mission of bringing you quality educational programming. So thank you again to our members. So that's all the housekeeping I have. I really am delighted to bring Douglas Baz, Charles Traub, and John Lawrence. And I would read their bios, but I feel like y'all have been able to see them here on the screen. So I think I'm just going to turn it over to them and welcome them. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Amanda, thank you.
Thank you all who've come to this gathering.
Absolutely. So John, I think I'll start off with you as the curator of this exhibition. This exhibition has been a long time in the making, much longer than most of our exhibitions take to come together. Can you give us a bit of the history of how this exhibition and the publication came to be?
Sure. It's been a long time since it was first discussed. I think the actual operations of producing the exhibit and the catalog fall within our more normal parameters. But shortly after Doug and Charles had finished Cajun Document, I had a meeting with Charles only in New York to talk about other things related to photography. And it was at that point that he showed me some of the results of their work in Louisiana, which at that time had just been accomplished a few years before. We talked about the possibility of doing something with this at some moment in the future. Around in the 1970s, the collection was a much smaller place. We were a few dozen people, employees, instead of over a gross of employees. And we had a very, very tiny exhibition gallery. Seeing the scope of this project led me to think that we needed a larger platform for it. We kept in touch over the years. 2009, we did a small version of this connected to a program of ours on the Acadian diaspora. And then that's when we really began thinking about putting this in a larger space that we were beginning to plan for our new facility at 520 Royal. And so I think this officially got on the books in 2015, and 4 years later, we opened it. So that's the very short version of all of this.
Absolutely. And this this exhibition was slated to open in April of 2020. And we all realized, pretty quickly that this, with the pandemic hitting and our museum having to close, that we were going to have to make some pretty huge adjustments to the exhibition, to all of the programming, and how we were able to still bring this exhibition to the public. So we've done that through a few ways. We've created a virtual exhibition, and we've been doing online programming like this with y'all as well. But we also created a video of the exhibition in the museum because so many people weren't able to come to the exhibition space, and it's a beautiful show and we wanted to capture it really. So it's a 10-minute video. We'd like to play it now, and Charles and Doug and John, please feel free to comment as we watch the video together. So I'll ask my colleague, Amy Williams, who's working behind the scenes, if she could pull it up and share it with us.
And I just wanted to say the video we will be viewing is pretty close to a final version, but it is missing some things like final credits, editorial tweaks, and technical tweaks. But
Who's that guy?
I like the hat.
I should mention actually that Charles and I, of course, are among the people who have not and never did get to actually physically see our own exhibition. But
yeah, that was a shame, the travel
so
restrictions.
we welcome this. We welcome having the video. And
What you're seeing now are some of the contact sheets.
there are 3,000 images were made over the course of 6-7 months. And the museum has all of those contact sheets and fill in the document with information people want to provide to those contact sheets, doing their own research or discovering their family members or something that we miss. So it's a living archive, which we're very proud of and thankful to the Historic New Orleans Collection for their support of this in every way.
You can see one of the sections of the exhibition for organizational purposes, some arbitrary themes were decided about how to organize this material. Sorry, Charles, you were in it too.
No, go ahead.
And we will see those themes as some of the slideshow plays and we comment on specific pictures. But there was that was strictly one way of many that the show could have been organized, and I think it turned out okay.
It turned out great.
My colleagues know that I say there are a lot of right ways to do things and only a few wrong ones, and we just have to not pick a wrong one. So.
You can see how beautiful the space is, and this is probably many of you know that this is a brand new building recently opened as part of the Historic New Orleans Collection Museum. And
yep.
the objects that you see that aren't photographs were John's idea, which we love the addition of the costume. I think you saw a fiddle, and perhaps you'll see a pirogue soon. You know, those things really kind of added, you know, to the context, put it in some physical context.
Is the music playing? Is the music playing? I couldn't quite hear it. Oh, it's me.
I don't hear it either.
I don't hear it. No, there should be some good traditional Cajun music behind this.
Yes, the final version, some of the previous versions have had that. So I'm not sure.
No problem. We'll fill in. Doug will play the harmonica. He learned how to play the harmonica.
I can play Criminal Waltz.
You can see the shrimp boots and the pirogue tying into the theme of work and play.
Amy says the participants can hear.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Great.
I guess they can't hear us then.
Okay.
One of the things Doug and I discussed just fairly recently, kind of realizing and feeling some lament that we couldn't see the actual show, though we've certainly seen and worked on the prints over the last year with several assistants, Blake Ogden to be noted, uh, is that these images have held up not only subject-wise, we hope you think so, but technically when they've been scanned in high resolution and we made beautiful prints, or rather Blake Ogden made beautiful prints from them. And there's something really magical in the fact that seeing them large, we never made them large back in the day. They were only 11 by 14 max, many were even 8 by 10. And they held up beautifully, and the detail that's in them and the incidental things are very important, we think, to the show, that that the environment, the sense of land, sense of water, details of different hats, and they're very, very sharp. We use mostly large format, 2 1/4, 2 3/4, or 2 1/4, 2 1/4, and many 4 by 5s, which is a big negative for those who are totally digital today or have never worked with the old-fashioned film processes. This is the Crawfish Festival.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Brian, for posting a link to our jukebox. Yes, which has our playlist of Cajun music. We tried to go with music that was from around the early 70s to kind of really give you a feel of the sounds you might have been hearing while you were in South Louisiana.
Charles and Doug, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the sense of tradition that you felt when being first exposed to this region of Louisiana.
John, I was thinking about that more in the past. Oh, there's the music. I was thinking about this more in the past few days. As we've said on some of these virtual tours, some of the tours that we've had with the museum, when we wandered down the Mississippi River Road and ended up in Louisiana, and then someone recommended that we should go across the Chafalaya, go across I-10 and into the Cajun country. We were absolutely kind of gobsmacked with what we found in terms of landscape, in terms of food, in terms of language. And, that was 1974. We were in our early 30s. And I've been thinking back about that, and I realized that, we had recently come up in a period of a lot of social change and ourselves, and a lot of cultural change and social disruption that has taken place today. We had lived through the civil rights movement. We had recently come through all of the turmoil about the war in Vietnam, and we were the products of the youth culture, the beginning of the youth culture. So I think I was thinking about that in relation to this, because I think all of those things perhaps we probably unconsciously somewhat adrift, but when we ended up in Cajun country and we saw the unusual landscape, we felt the family tradition, the tradition of food and the tradition of music, it just totally captured our imagination. And so I think that's what that hit us the hardest, I would say, in 1973.
Just to fill in on that, you have to remember we were big city people, more or less, though I am from Kentucky. coming from Chicago and urban setting into a, a rural setting where we lived really for 6, 7 months, and seeing that how the landscape itself and the waterscape really connected people and created a culture which was totally unique to anything we knew and probably to most people in the United States at that time. The Cajun idea of what Cajun meant was only vaguely in the mind of people interested in music, and even the food culture hadn't spread too much out of Louisiana. Paul Prudhomme, I think, was just beginning his enterprises, and he did popularize Cajun food, at least for a while. And that's really important to note, that today I don't think there's any, probably very few, and nothing the size of Cajun Louisiana, of a culture connected the way the Cajun culture is. And it is not only important to preserve it, but to understand how it is threatened not only by modern cultural life and the spread of popular and industrial and commercial enterprises, but also by the loss of the land and water that has occurred because of global warming. And that those issues give even more value to us, I think, about the fact that we had this experience and that we made this document that at least pictorially preserves some of that period.
I see everyone that Amy has put up the slideshow that we wanted to do as the basis for further discussion. And just Charles and Doug, just to lead into that, the photographs, I think in general, around the same time you were doing this, Walker Evans was being interviewed by Leslie Katz and has that famous somewhat quotation about, he didn't work as a documentarian, he worked in a documentary style. And I think that kind of sums up a lot of the approach that you have, where you are kind of incorporating the descriptiveness of the documentarian with the visual training of artists. And I think that's what makes these pictures stand out and make them so compelling visually and so useful as a historical record. And I just wanted you to kind of have that in the back of your mind as you kind of comment on these.
Well, there's no question that we brought to it our background as creative photographers trained in I would say what we now call the fine art tradition, but I don't really like that word, or label. And we were, of course, aware of all the traditions of photography at that time. And we did do some research. We talked to a famous sociologist, Howard Becker, about, issues like that, anthropology. We knew actually a very famous anthropologist named Fred Agan, who I remember talking about this. But we didn't follow those kinds of directives. We followed our own intuitive, instinctual, creative muse, I guess, knowing that we had to be somewhat faithful to try to find out not only what could be said with the camera, but what the camera could say to us about a culture, that we couldn't abstract it exactly. We wanted to make sure we were recording the adventures, if you will, and the festivals like this, the Courier de Mardi Gras, as they go looking for food for the evening pot, and what this place looked like. And we were very conscious to make sure that we tried to cover as much of what we made some lists about, events, various people, architecture, things like that. But once we got on the road, which was every day, then we just stopped and made pictures as we found those things which struck us in our creative muse.
I think it might be useful to understand that the school, the training, the school of photography that we came up through made us very aware of not only Walker Evans' approach to photography, but the Farm Security Administration photographs, that entire body of work in the 1930s. We were aware of Auger's photographs of Paris. We were aware of Paul Strand's portraits. And for example, August Sanders' work in Germany of those occupational portraits. So, so we did have some overview in our minds of how to begin to approach an entire culture, which would obviously would be land, it would be people, it would be architecture, it would be particular kinds of events, and of course, especially in the case of Southwest Louisiana, particular food and particular music. So that was the kind of architecture, I guess, or the structure that we were coming out of, but also wanted to make beautiful photographs. We used large format cameras because of photography's ability to render description and detail that you don't see with your eye, or you don't usually allow yourself to focus on. And the camera does that in a very objective way. It sees all things equally, with equal description. And the larger the negative, the more descriptive the detail is. The more you feel the actual moss, or you sense the water, or the dirt, or in some other photographs that are about to come up, even small details of cigarette butts in an ashtray. Whatever it is, it all adds to the texture and the message of a photograph. This particular one we included because of the tradition of going from farmhouse to farmhouse in the Cajun Mardi Gras, which is so different from the New Orleans Mardi Gras, and the tradition of the young men, the contest, the contest the young men have to see who can catch this wildly afraid chicken who's running around the farmyard. And that ends up in the pot, in the gumbo at the end.
I noticed there were a couple of questions. Somebody asked, is there a language barrier? And yes and no. We did actually take some French lessons in Chicago before we went down. Of course, it didn't take, but on top of it, it was really the wrong French. So it wouldn't have mattered. But people really embraced us as, wow, you're from Chicago, or you're photographers? Come on in and have a gumbo with us. We were never put off by anybody that I can remember, as we just sort of randomly introduced ourselves, when we stopped on the road to see a farmer doing something, or wanted to go to a boucherie, or just whatever. People would embrace us, happy that we were acknowledging the existence of their culture, and that we, in fact, were documenting it. And that was a very unusual experience for us. Even then, it wasn't so easy just to be the all-present photographer, but certainly easier than it would be today.
I think to be even more specific about that, that happens to be a musician friend of mine asked that question. The language is a combination of Southern colloquialism, archaic French, and so, I mean, it's not like it was all in French. it's a gumbo. It was always a mixture, and the Cajuns in particular then and still do. Cajun people were often fluent in both because they had to be, because of their own cultural history.
Let's hold on this picture a minute. We took 2 pictures of this man, one with his wife, and it's marked Vermilion Parish, but that is apparently incorrect. It's near New Iberia. And this is Mr. Roger, who we found out the name and identified it because his daughter saw the show and has entered information about her family into the database that is up at the museum. And that's really important because that really gives a family history here and tells you more if people are doing research about the legacy and lineage of people who are still attached to Cajun Louisiana, and those of us who also want to know more about it.
It's actually her. It's this is Augustine Roger, and it's his granddaughter who came to the exhibition and was absolutely amazed to see these pictures of her grandparents. And she still lives in New Iberia.
We've had a couple of like that, not only Mr. Roger, but the Russell Vaughn, who was the hoop net maker.
Yeah.
That identification came to light as a result of the exhibition fairly close to the time that the show opened. And so I think the very first item in the chat box is a link to the ID project for Cajun Document. So if you see something someone who is not identified or is identified perhaps incorrectly, we'd love to have the information to add or correct. Doug and Charles, one of the things about this project to me that has been so extraordinary and from the beginning is that all of these pictures are jointly authored. There is no Charles pictures and no Doug pictures. They're all or by both. And I just wanted you to talk about that and why you decided to present that this way and see what.
Well, I think that this kind of comes down in a way to a philosophy of this style of photography, which is that the subject of the photographs and of this kind of document is more important than the ego of the photographer. So in a sense, and this is one philosophy I think about this kind of documentary style photography, is that the photographer conceptually wants to remove himself, edit himself or herself out of the picture. It's about what's in front of the camera, not about how slickly the photographer can organize the picture or insert. You don't want to feel the presence of the photographer in this kind of photographs. It's the content that's more important. And we just came to a decision that that's the way we should do this in the final editing of the pictures. And as you say, it is very unusual actually in the history of the medium for two photographers to work together on a project and not carve out their own turf.
You have to realize that we were on agreement on the approach, and of course our trainings were the same, and we had worked together, though making pictures for our own self and traveling road trips before, not anything like this. And when you're with someone working like this day in and day out, it's very hard not to be melding, if you will, ideas that are talked about in the evening or seen in the context previous day, or we developed a lot of our film and made context in a little bathroom that we stayed in a house we stayed in above a garage in a little apartment. And we tried to do it as frequently as we could, so we knew what we were getting and seeing. And then you share that, and you go on the road and you sort of stop here. We both sometimes made pictures of the same thing. So, or one person looked at something on the right, and the other person looked at something on the left. And I have to say now, all these years later, I think 47, 48 now, I'm not sure who did take what always. And I'm very, it's very hard to tell. And so there's no point in sort of not making this a joint project. And frankly, the friendship and the unity we had together made it, I think, more productive as we went through Louisiana and Cajun Louisiana. I think doing it alone would have been quite different because one person serves as a foil for the other and engaging the subject matter or a person or a particular encounter that we would have.
I think we actually, and also being two of us as opposed to a lone photographer, I think we were able to engage people in a way that, maybe just a single person really wouldn't. We had our own thing, banter going on between us. And I think people could, perhaps a team approach was maybe even less threatening than an individual one. Because, even then in the 70s, there wasn't the kind of suspicion of a photographer from the outside coming into your community as there have been, in times since. There certainly was some, but one of the things we did to dispel some of that about halfway through was we had some shirts made.
Those are wonderful.
Yeah. Of course, mine doesn't fit really anymore, but
Mine stopped fitting a long time ago.
It's an important artifact.
Let's talk a second about.
Obviously, we couldn't. We were not invisible by a long shot. It's not like Cartier-Bresson working with a 35mm camera, and you never even felt his presence. We were the absolute opposite of that, because we had long hair, we had northern accents, and we had huge cameras, 4x5 camera on a tripod over your shoulder. A 2 1/4 camera is not something that you can hide. So that's a whole different approach to engaging a subject.
Let's talk about these two water pictures, the Port Fauchon, Fauchon Marina. We were fortunate, I don't even remember getting one of the oil companies to take us up in the helicopters that we photographed. Did a lot of aerials from that helicopter. And we have seen a number of pictures recently of this area, of the landscape, and how much is disappearing. And of course, this looks pretty new and pristine in some ways. And I guess people who are visiting here with us know this spot better than we do. But today it's just completely built up. It's an industrial complex that is hard for me to imagine how it's changed in all those years, and how it's sort of lost what here appears almost to be innocent and quaint and very functional to maintain a kind of intimate fishery if you will.
Yeah,
Now
it
it's
is.
a big
Port
industrial.
Fourchon has become the major kind of jumping off point for supplying the offshore industry in the Gulf. It is what you see here on triple steroids now. I mean, there are buildings with dormitories to house offshore workers. There are all kinds of infrastructure that this photograph does not show, because that wasn't what it was designed to do at the moment this was made.
But I think this image in particular, I think also gives you a sense of how little of a rise due to climate change, how little bit of a rise in the sea level it would take to totally obliterate this kind of landscape.
On the Port Fourchon website, the elevation is listed as 1 foot above sea level. So, right.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to ask you all a kind of larger conditional thing. For people who have pursued photography with the intensity and level that you all have, people know that that's hard work. You're worn out at the end of the day. Thinking and seeing is a difficult task, especially in unfamiliar surroundings. But did you ever purely take time off? I know that you were photographing things that were designed to be pleasurable and enjoyable, but did you ever just have to shut down and say, we have to give our eyes a rest, we have to stop thinking about this 24 hours a day? I'm just curious about that.
Actually, we did. We did occasionally, but I would say there were two things. First of all, we were 30, so we had unlimited energy at that time, and most of what we did was so exciting, was so much fun. The things that we ran into, the people we ran into, that certainly didn't seem to be tiring to me. I think I do remember one time when we took some time off to try to learn how to
Drink beer.
Skeet shoot. We bought a shotgun, and we were city boys. We had never used a shotgun or a rifle or anything, and it seemed to be a natural part of the environment. So we did try to initiate ourselves into using a shotgun.
But we photographed it as we did it. There are photographs of the range,
Yeah,
whatever. We didn't really need, as Doug just said, we were young and everything was exciting. The next day produced something else. And by the way, we were fed incredibly by people who embraced us. And every day I think the break was to go eat. It really made a great break. This is a picture somebody commented about recently, and Doug had just met somebody who made a lot of money in the oil business inventing something. And I reminded him that I remembered the story of this man who has his very beautifully stitched boots, was clearly an oil business motif. And I remember him telling us he invented some little widget that did something, I don't remember what, and that he made a lot of money because of his patent, and hence his boots.
Right.
And that's in Bro Bridge, I think.
Yeah, it's a wonderful picture. I mean, it not only kind of telegraphs the importance of that industry, but there's also just a sense of pride in owning such a finely crafted object as those boots must be. So.
I think as we look at this section here, a lot of traditions spoke and just things that's endemic to the Cajun culture. This woman was a well-known quilter, I believe. She And I imagine that some of her quilts are now heavily collected. And I remember she had quite a number of them inside. She took this out to show us. And of course, she's wearing a fairly traditional Cajun garcelet, and that's, and she wasn't putting it on for us. That's the way we found her.
Right.
And I don't imagine anybody really does that today. Dresses like that. This is the tradition of putting money on for the wedding couple. And I think
Just the Cajun version of what the rest of our culture does, except it usually comes in the form of an envelope. Right? I know at Italian weddings, for example, a really Italian wedding, the bride will has a special purse that she wears, and those money-filled envelopes go into that purse. But I like hanging it all out like the Cajuns do, like this. This was.
I think this was at Broussard's, was it not?
The architecture looks similar.
I think
Yeah.
it was. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a wedding. held in-
Oh yeah, this picture kind of relates to something we were talking about before. You know, about the idea of not bringing your ego. So, you know, the photographer in this kind of work refining themselves out. This may be about as close as we got in the photographs that we show, where you can perhaps feel the presence of the photographer. But it was so beautiful with the light coming through that, yet it was still, we're still photographing tradition I gather that this family, you know, didn't have screens on the windows, and so you needed the mosquito bar to do this. But again, also going back to the large format photography, if you were to stand in front of this print, you would be able to see the weave of that mosquito bar material, and it's, you know, that's part of the thrill of a beautiful photograph.
As I remember, but I just go back briefly to that was a traditional Cajun shotgun house, and you could see the construction of the flat wall it's all wood paneling, but the support paneling. And look at that beautiful brass bed. And it's I imagine most of those kinds of houses are pretty not very well preserved today, if they exist at all.
Mm-hmm.
Mama Tebow, she was down the street where we lived in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, and behind somebody's small house and a little apartment above the garage. And we could hop down to Mama Tebow's quite frequently and often for crawfish or for crawfish étouffée, which really became kind of a staple of our diet. And we were always embraced, you know, everybody would say, hey, I love the photographers.
Yeah, it was important. If we could go back to that for just a second. I think this picture is important in other ways also, because it documents the fact that the Cajun parishes were not just all white by a long shot. There were not only Creoles, but just straight up African American residents there. And, you know, we photographed what was in front of us. And the interesting thing is that people have asked me if there about racial tension, if we felt that kind of racial tension in 1973, 74, that was going on in other parts of the country. And I have to say that either we were naive or, you know, we just, it wasn't so powerful that we were really aware of it. but we may have just been totally naive about it. I don't know.
We recently had a comment from an African-American woman who saw the show, and she thought how well balanced the show was to show what she considered the bigger Cajun culture, not Cajuns, but the land of the Cajuns and who's there and the mix that are there. And we found that very rewarding that all these years later. And we really didn't encounter any hostility going anywhere, as far as I remember, from anybody. Somebody asked in the question asked, did we hear Clifton Chenier? Yes, we did. And Cleveland Chenier, his brother. And again, I think this was in Mamou, was it not, Doug?
I don't recall it.
We were very fortunate.
It might be more likely have been in Opelousas.
I don't think so. Anyway.
But I wanted to go back to the previous photograph. We're here, talking about music because, clearly the music and the food have been the two parts of the culture that have, I think, been largely responsible for the culture being known today.
Yeah, they're the major exports.
Yeah, right. And in this particular case, for me, this is an important photograph because this is at Fred's Lounge in Mamou. And over on the left, which you can barely see him, I believe that's Revon Reed, who had the radio program there every Saturday morning. And they're at Fred's Lounge. And these were the people who actually revived the Cajun Mardi Gras in the 50s. I think it happened here. And, I just love this. This is Saturday morning. And with Cliff, you can see the whiskey bottle, and I love the triangle, and the and the screwdriver, and the little piece of rope. It's all part of the wonderful powers of photography to describe. And then the boy, and of course the accordion is such an important, the musical instrument next to the fiddle of Cajun music. And I think to me he represents the future of it. And so so you have the various generations. That's Sandy Corvée, the man with the dark glasses standing up. He was an important figure during that time, also in the revival of Cajun music. And I love the not only the expression, of course, on the kids' pants, but the kids' pants were 1970s. It's his white shoes. It's just perfect. So I think there's a lot going on, for me in that picture that I really love,
Go ahead, Doug, sorry.
Well, I mean.
We're very fortunate. We heard the Balfour brothers. And I'm not even sure we deliberately went to hear these people. We just found them as we went forward, of people who are legendary today. And this is
I have to say that Boudin is one of the things that has stuck with me. Crawfish etouffee, gumbo, and Boudin. I love Boudin. You just can't
that was
get
a nice piece the museum posted yesterday about the Boudin and its history being totally Cajun. And I would like to meet the ultimate expert on Boudin and have a little tasting feast. So.
You can come down here now, and there is a Boudin Trail that you can go drive on and go taste Boudin across South Louisiana. So when it's safe to do so, y'all can come back.
Well, we plan to as COVID disappears.
I have a friend who lived in New Orleans for a while, and he now lives in Madrid, and he is a terrific Boudin maker. So I could have it there. I can have it
Oh.
local when
Well,
I
that
go to
sounds
Madrid.
great too. Yeah.
I have a student who brings it from New Orleans, who brings it back
Oh, nice.
quite frequently.
Oh yeah, so we thank y'all so much. That was wonderful, and we have had some questions popping up in the Q&A while y'all were talking. So I'd love to be able to share some of these with y'all and get your answers. Let's see. Melissa, as she says, I'm a New Orleans native living in Chicago. As a college student studying abroad in Paris in 1976, I attended an exhibition at the Maison de Radio France as part of the U.S. bicentennial. The show was entitled Louisiana BNME, the opening of which was attended by a Louisiana delegation from Codeville. For those of you who might not know Codeville, Codeville is an organization that seeks to preserve Cajun French language in Louisiana. She says, I recall that the exhibition consisted of photos of Cajun country, but I'm hazy on the specifics and have been unable to find an exhibit catalog. I was wondering if you were aware of this exhibition or if any of your work was included.
I'm not. I don't, we did, of course, Codeville was a fairly new organization in 1973 when it was brand new, and, with an effort to preserve the French language. We became very friendly with a Frenchman who was sent by the French government to Southwest Louisiana to get that program going. And he remains a friend of ours, Etienne Vermester. But I know nothing about this exhibition.
I suspect we can find out easy enough from Etienne. He was the director of the Codeville, one of the directors. There was one in northern Louisiana and one in southern, both who were very interested in photography. We will find out. We will do that research.
I don't know if this will help the questioner, if some names might jog a memory. At that time, it's possible that some very early work by Philip Gould, who still operates out of Grand Coteau area, would have been included. Also, Charles and Doug, I'm not sure if you ever ran into Turner Brown, who was
we did.
Was doing a project in this area, and earlier photographs by Vonville Winans or Elmore Morgan Sr. might have been the basis for that exhibition in Paris as well. There are some other possibilities out there, but I'm not firsthand familiar with the exhibition.
We actually do hope at some point, perhaps, to travel this show not only to France, but also to Nova Scotia, and perhaps to cross the way to the Cajun parishes, because of the double whammy of COVID and the three major storms that took place even after the exhibition opened in September, I think prevented a lot of people from the Cajun parishes from being able to view the exhibition. So we would like them to have that opportunity, and we would like the feedback from that community, actually.
Absolutely.
Somebody asked a question about, are we concerned that it will bring more attention having this show to Cajun Louisiana, and therefore maybe create further destruction, I guess, from tourism and people wanting to know more. And I think you always have to think about that in any project. But I think probably people knowing about it would allow the communities of Acadiana to probably do things and prepare things and preserve things just for that point. So tourism might be and I know there is a lot of tourism, a very good thing. I just was looking at the last Sunday supplement in New York Times of 51 places that they thought were very important for people to know about, which are hidden away. Well, they're no longer hidden, they're in the New York Times. And I was just thinking about how in some of those places will become major tourist places in the next couple of years when people travel again. So go ahead.
Charles and Doug, I know you are not anthropologists, but I mean, I think this is this is something that is always in the air in terms of documenting our culture. I think it's gainsaid that documenting a people photographically or however changes things. It doesn't have to change them for the worse, but whether we're talking about Acadian Louisiana or Micronesia or the Amazon rainforest, when people from the outside go and photograph something, it can't help but change it. But I don't.
Well, in our case,
today,
John,
pardon me?
In our case, the photographs were under wraps for 45 years, so we were not responsible for any the dilution of the Cajun culture.
I think the ship sailed a long time ago.
Yeah, right. So yes, exactly. I think, you know, if we can be part of the movement to preserve what's left of the Cajun culture and what can continue forward and give people some, you know, insight into the way it was, I think that's a positive thing.
I agree, and I think a larger purpose, if you want to define it as that of this exhibition, is showing what was, what remains, what is retrievable, what is irretrievable, and
some of that,
those things can direct us going forward.
If people want to do research or want to add things that they've learned from these pictures to the Cajun ID project, that would help preserve more than one might think as we move forward. It is a permanent, these pictures are permanently at the museum in their archive. So that's important.
I think we have about time for about one more question. And Margaret is asking, are there any individual prints available through the shop at HNOC? We do have some of our prints from our collection available on demand you could have them printed and framed. I don't think that any of the photographs from this series are currently available in that format. However, I would be remiss if I did not hold up,
Whoops.
Seeing it. I know it's disappearing, y'all. There we go.
Magic.
Right here. Oh, thank you, Doug. Yeah, our beautiful book that we published alongside of it, Cajun Document. It's all of the photographs featured in the exhibition, available on our website, and we are currently closed to the public, but you can order it and have it shipped to you, or there's curbside pickup available. So, if you
as Charles said, all of these photographs, the entire exhibition, the prints, you know, we've given to the museum to archive and for future research. But certainly, if anyone is interested in a print, we did have one viewer of the exhibition contact us and to purchase a print, which we're certainly happy to do.
And we're happy to work with the museum to make those images that could be sold in the museum, of course.
Perfect.
And by the way, you know, that part of the revenue of the book goes to the preservation of wetlands. I think we forgot to mention that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I would also like, in terms of the book, it's hard to see, certainly in a Zoom meeting, but the book is very beautifully designed and printed. And I just once again want to give credit to Tana Coman, who is the designer that was hired by the museum to work with us. And she did an incredible job. You know, her aesthetic was just matched ours perfectly. And we're very pleased with the book and the way it turned out.
I would just like to go. Yeah. I would just add, everybody at the museum has been remarkable to work with and diligent under a great deal of stress because of COVID and storms. And, you know, we can see from this walkthrough how beautifully installed and how beautifully prepared the show is and thought out and curated. And just everybody has worked with us. I don't know that I've ever had an exhibition experience quite as congenial and thoughtful. And I appreciate it to the museum and to all of you.
We feel like we're sort of part of the HNOC family now. We've been doing this for so long. working on this. So.
You are officially part of the family now.
Amanda, I know we've kind of reached our designed limit, but there was one question that I think I can answer briefly, if not conclusively. It was a question about the Moss Man.
Mm-hmm.
And as I understand it, the Moss Man is one of a number of stock characters that populate the Courrier de Mardi Gras, and having a person draped in moss is a tradition. There's also the scary person, the Cajun Dracula, and so that it's as I understand it, it is a typical character of the Cajun Mardi Gras.
Interesting.
And anybody has any information further on any of the pictures should please send it forth to the museum.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
please.
are. We're happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. The people can contact us, Charles and I.
Well, thank y'all. And actually, everybody, after this program is over, you'll be receiving an email from Zoom, but it has my email in it. And if you have questions for Charles and Doug, please just send it to me. I'll pass it along to them and they can respond to y'all. So that's the easiest way probably to get in touch with them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks to everybody. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yes. Yeah. From me too.
All right.
Thank you, John.
We'll see everybody whenever we see
The by and by.
Exactly. And in the meantime, check out the virtual exhibition of Cajun Document. Please share it with family, friends, especially in South Louisiana, so we can have some more of those photographs identified, hopefully. And thank everyone. Have a good.
And Amanda, you will be sending a link to the recorded version of this whenever we post it. Is that correct?
What we do is it is available on our Facebook page, the Historic New Orleans Collections Facebook page now, because we've been sharing this via Facebook Live. And also in a few days, we'll post this on the Historic New Orleans Collections YouTube page. So just go on YouTube, search for HNOC, and you'll see it there.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda and Amy Williams, who's not.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Yes, thanks to our great tech support.
Yes. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.